Hello everybody, welcome back. This is gonna be a little bit of a slower video, not as much editing, where we just sit down and we talk about tank balance. Now, tank balance is what we're talking about today, not tank strength or overpoweredness, as you can see by the stuff over here. We're not talking about how strong somebody is, S tier, D tier, A tier, F tier, you know. We're just talking about how well the characters are designed. Because a well-designed tank doesn't have to be changed over and over and over. And just because a tank is well-designed, it doesn't mean it's always going to be meta and top tier, right? A well-designed tank just means that it doesn't need any refinement from the devs. It can kind of just sit there and be a part of the game and fluctuate with the meta without being, I don't know, a meta breaker or a meta changer. So, I guess before we get to defining these tanks, I think it's important to note what a good tank is. So, the tank role isn't just a bigger DPS. It's not just a larger man with a larger gun that can take more hits. It's supposed to be the role that that players pick. It's supposed to be the characters that draw attention from the enemies, right? It's supposed to be the protective characters that soak up the damage. Because if we had no tanks and it was just DPS and support running around the maps, it would basically be, you know, your Call of Duty shooters, you know, your Fortnites, you know, it would be your battle royales. Without tanks, it would just be absolute chaos on the battlefield. And tanks kind of hone in the chaos and try to take control of everything. They try to take control of space, and they try to make it so that there are some safe areas that the enemy team are too scared to walk into. That's why we have choke points in Overwatch. I guess in Paladins too, there's choke points in every game. So yeah, let's get to ranking these guys. And before I do, a couple more things I guess to say. I'm not biased towards Overwatch or Paladins. Both games have shining examples of what a tank is, and both games have a shining example of how to not make a tank. But we will get to that here. So let's talk about the ranks here, because they look a little weird. They're not S, A, B, F, right? And I never liked letter ranks, right? Because they don't tell you anything. So instead, here at the very top, we have the ideal tank. This is perfect design by far. No touch-ups needed. Only if the characters in here were to be overpowered simply due to meta shifts, all they would need is some changes to numbers. That's it. Nothing to their kits. Their kits are fine. Down here we have hybrid tanks. Now, devs like to make tanks that are tanky and also supportive, or tanky and also DPS-ish, and that's okay. It's okay to have tanks that have kind of two roles smushed together and kind of be the jack of all trades between those two roles, but that takes away from their abilities to be the ideal tank, and you'll see what I mean in a second. Underneath that is too tanky. So that is the opposite. This is kind of the other end of the spectrum of hybrid tanks, right? Where they're kind of the jack of all trades and going anywhere. These guys are just too good at their roles. Tanks shouldn't be able to just sit on the point and have endless amounts of sustain with no need to keep track of any sort of cooldowns or ability management. This role, or this level here, is just reserved for people who can basically play the brain dead characters, who don't have to back up and get healing. This role is this is kind of a broader spectrum, but this is for people who have really weaker kits. Maybe they're a bit niche. Maybe they only fit in certain team compositions. And they can't just kind of be thrown anywhere. This is the role for them. And then throw picks. I don't think we'll have anybody down here, just because everyone's pretty much good down here. But when it comes to... Yeah, because when it comes to these two games, they don't really have any throw picks at the moment, I don't think. Unless you don't know what you're doing, in which case you are the throw pick, not the character. So, I don't think we'll have anybody down here, if I'm being completely honest. But we will see. And I think it's only responsible that we start with Doomfist. Maybe we mix it up a bit. Can I mix these around? I can. Let's just mix these around a little bit. And get a good mix between Overwatch and Paladins. How about that? So that we're not just doing Overwatch first and then Paladins. How's that mix look? And of course, we gotta start with our boy Winston, don't we? So Winston... where would I put Winston here? I would put Winston in ideal tank spot. Winston is the prime... Winston's like good. He's a good pick. He's just, I don't know. There's a really good reason why XQC mained Winston throughout seasons and seasons of Overwatch. Maybe he switched? I don't know. Not a big XQC enjoyer. But Winston is just a very solid pick when it comes to tank. Just because he distracts the enemy team by jumping onto them and applying immediate pressure. And his jump, if you do it right, is basically on a 4-second cooldown. And then he also has a shield, and he can, like, dive. So he's really good in dive, but he can also peel, so if his backline's being punished, he can immediately come back and help. And his ultimate is a lot more sustain, but it's not just free sustain, you have to be very skilled with his primal rage. I think Winston is an amazing tank. Coming up next, Azan. Now, Azan on release would be here. Azan on release was crazy. So for all my Overwatch fans and non-Paladins enjoyers, Azan basically... How do I put this? He had basically a Mei wall. He had a dash that could pin, basically a short Reinhardt dash, I guess if you want to call it that. He had... I can't think of his other ability off the top of my head. He had stun that lifted people into the air. It was pretty interesting. Not really a stun, but just stopped them in their tracks. But his most broken thing is that he would build ire over time. And the ire is basically just a 0 to 100% like bar that he would gain. But he would gain it by either taking damage or dealing damage, which is just what tanks do normally. And when his ire was at 100%, he would have, like, what was it on launch? 40% damage reduction, which is nuts and crazy. And I think that was back before Cauterize was moved from an item to just a thing in the game. So people had to buy Cauterize against Zon just because his amount of damage reduction, his abilities on cycle, his immense damage on his weapon, he was too tanky. He had too much going for him. But nowadays, with him being nerfed down, his numbers being adjusted, I would say Azan's in a good spot. Azan is basically what Orisa... I'll put Orisa up here since we're talking about her. Basically what Orisa should be. Azan has a lot of tanky potential, but his damage output isn't insane to compare to it, or it isn't long-ranged and consistent to compare to it. And on top of that, to get that tankiness, you have to be good at managing your abilities, right? You can't just use ability 1, then ability 2, then ability 3, then ability 1. You have to understand when and where for Azan to work. Do you use your ultimate to go in or go out? Because his ultimate is very similar to like Doomfist's ult, where he goes in the sky and then he descends. But it's different in its own way. Anyway, Orisa. Bam. I think we all knew where this is going. Orisa is just too tanky. I heard somewhere that Orisa was originally meant for Overwatch 2 to only wield the javelin. That her whole kit was going to be javelin based. And the fact that she still has her consistent fusion driver gun kind of makes her well-rounded, which is too well-rounded. Because she's got her Fortify, which makes her immune to CC, headshots, and her Fortify does too much. It makes her immune to CC, makes her immune to headshots, makes her have extra damage resistance. I think they added back the movement penalty for having Fortify up, but when that was off, there was no penalty for using Fortify. And on top of that, you also gain like 100 health, 100 over health for using the ability. It's a panic button. And she also has her Javelin Spin, which deletes projectiles from the front, so it gives her some time to breathe. And you also have your Javelin Throw, which while it's not a tanky ability, it is an interrupt. And so Orisa was she is still just the horse, you know, too tough to take down. And I really wish they went more, I don't know. I wish she was more like a Zahn in terms of controlling and like making sure all of her abilities are on cooldown or ready. Okay, next up we got Yagorath. And Yagorath on launch would be here just because she was basically a raid boss that you had to kill on the point, and it was impossible to kill her on the point because when she was standing on the point, she had like 60-70% damage reduction, immune to CC. It was crazy. And then Hi-Rez got a little bit too scared, and they nerfed her down to here. And it's really sad to see her down here, man. It's really sad to see Yagorath down there. I really like the concept of Yagorath. I think if they reworked her and made it so that she didn't roll on top of the ground, maybe make that an ability. But for now, she feels too sluggish. If Yagorath needs to retreat, she has to curl up into her ball and then dash away, right? And if she doesn't have dash on, her acceleration is really low, so she basically doesn't move for the first 4 seconds. I don't know, she feels clunky. And it feels bad. I was also told, behind the scenes stuff, that Yagorath was supposed to burrow through the ground like Venture does in Overwatch. And that would be so fun. Bring that in. Make Yag do that. That sounds amazing. And just have her roll be another mode of transportation, like on an ability or something. And it's weird because Yagorath has so much stuff, but she's built to be a point tank, but can't be a point tank because she's the tank. She has the center of attention, and she doesn't have enough damage reduction to do so. But if she has too much damage reduction to do so, having a Yagorath is like easy, right? And then too much damage reduction, she's just an Orisa. So you really have to be careful with Yagorath. I think she just needs a rework, and it's really sad because she's very close. Oh, here we go again. I'm gonna talk about Ball. She's very close to Ball in her playstyle. Go in the back line because you're fast as a tank. Go in the back line, harass the back line by rolling through them. Maybe plant yourself, come out of your Ball form, and fight, and then leave. And that brings us to Ball, I suppose. And I think it's just because I think it really is just an engine diff, or I think it really is just a dev team diff for Ball. Because Ball's up here, right? Ball is a hybrid tank. He's very similar to Winston in playstyle. You go in, you get your kills, whatever. But Winston is more along the lines of being protective or being divey. And like Winston doesn't harass all the time, but Ball harasses all the time. He's very DPS oriented when it comes to harassing the backline, right? You swing in, pile drive. And then even some Ball mains know how to use the new repel system. Not the repel. I don't know. There's a word for it where you grapple and then pull yourself to make it so that you don't have a cooldown on your grapple anymore. So you grapple, pull yourself, don't go into Fireball, and then drop on the enemy team, and then use your grapple to get out, maybe hit some people on the way out, and then you could just do that over and over and over and over again. And you're constantly applying pressure. The only issue with Ball is that he doesn't have a way to protect his team, which I guess they fixed. With Ball being able to give his shields to his allies. But like, I don't know, no Ball does that. You know? Balls would only do that. I think even Yeatle said himself, like, Ball would only do that if he goes in, shields, gets enough shield, gets out, and has enough shield to give it to his teammates, right? Like, I kind of wish... I don't know. I kind of wish Ball had 2 bars. Or at least when he activated his shield ability, he gave shields to himself on his own health bar down here. And then just above it, there was like a team-based health bar that he could fill up. And maybe it doesn't go to 500 immediately. Maybe on one activation, it increases by 100. And then when you go to your team, you disperse it evenly amongst your team. So maybe if you have 4 teammates, that's 20 overhealth to all of them. But maybe after a couple activations, you store up like 500 overhealth. And it's like, oh my gosh, after 5 activations, I have so much stored team-based overhealth. I can just give that stuff to my team. And now my whole team has 100 overhealth. Let's go, team. Let's go in, right? Yeah, I think, I don't know. But until they do something to tweak it a little bit more, I think Ball's still just going to be the harasser in the back line. Because no Ball main picks Ball to be protective of their team. No. They pick it to be the cool copy and clone of Yeatle. Speaking of copy and clone, hang on a second. We gotta talk about Doomfist. Because every Doomfist main wants to be Zebra. And every Doomfist main thinks that they're the Zebra. And you know, Doomfist is pretty good in his current state. I'm not as good as, you know, Zebra or any of the other go-to Doomfist. I will admit that. I still have some Doomfist training to go to. There's this one Doomfist main. Let me quickly look up his name real quick. I've been watching a lot of... If this takes me too long, I'm not even gonna bother with it. Doomfist? In my recommended, maybe, perhaps. Shoot, I don't know. I was gonna shout him out, but I can't think of the name right now. It'll pop into my head in here in a second. But anyway, let's talk about balance. So Doomfist, I think he's less than Ball, because at least Ball has a way to give his team some protection. Only way Doom can protect his team is by going into the back line and protecting it. But if Doom just saves his cooldowns for going into his own back line and protecting his team, he won't have any cooldowns to do what Doom does best and go into the enemy back line and mess stuff up, right? So Doom kind of has to play the game of, do I sit back and play from afar while I wait for the enemy to make the first move and then I jump on them? Or do I jump first and leave my team completely open? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what they could do to fix Doomfist. I don't know. Make him a DPS again. Make Doomfist a DPS again. Or make him be able to throw like a little mini shield or something. I don't know. Or give him that... give him that shield from the Mirror Watch event. That's crazy. Give him that shield from the Mirror Watch event. That would be crazy. And then give him his, like, supportive abilities. I don't know, man. Make it so his slam, like, heals people on his team when he slams into him. Maybe he gives him, like, over health when he slams next to him. I don't know. I don't know. These are some crazy ideas. But Doomfist right now just feels like a very chunky DPS, which is not how you make a tank. Okay, D.Va. I don't know. I feel like we've been talking about a lot of Overwatch. Let's talk about somebody here. Let's bump Ashe up the list here. I think Ashe. I gotta remember Ashe here. Ashe is really good. Really well designed tank. And that's mostly due to the fact that Ashe... I'm gonna do a little bit more mixing while I talk here. I think that's more a fact that Ashe's cards allow her to do a lot of cooldown resets. But it's only if you're like good enough to land the stuff, right? So like Ashe has a cooldown reduction thing that makes it so that if you hit somebody with her blast back ability, it basically resets the cooldown on your shield. So you can deploy your shield Shoot behind your shield, and if somebody gets too close, you can blast them back, and boom, you have your shield back again. And then if the going gets tough, you use your shield bash to just run away. And her ultimate is nuts. It makes her immortal on the point. And I mean, come on. What's better than that? Right? I think that's absolutely nuts. Alright, who's next? Junker Queen. I want to put Junker Queen here. Because she feels like a DP. She's got the same thing as Doomfist. She feels like a very chunky DPS character. That being said, hot take, I'm putting Queen down here. And that's mostly due to the fact that, I don't know. It's mostly due to the fact that some of her abilities just don't hold a torch to what she was on launch. On launch, up here, definitely. Oh my god, that Queen shout, my goodness. But down here, it just doesn't feel like anything. And I don't know. Okay, I'm split between here and here. Because I'm judging it based off I've never had the good luck when playing Queen. Every time I play Queen, I'm shouting going in. I think my team's with me. I see them running in with me, and then I turn around and I'm dead, and they didn't come in with me at all. Even though they got my shout, even though they were running with me, they stopped for some reason. But I don't know. Queen has like a good fit. I don't think she's as bad as Yagorath, so I'll put her up here. I think what Queen suffers from the most is her tankiness relies on healing, right? And so when you look at the other tank players here, right? You got Winston with his bubble. That's just a straight up shield. You got Azan. He's got damage reduction built into his kit. He's got walls. Ashe has damage reduction on her shoulder bash, and she also has the shield and the shield resets. But her tankiness relies on healing, and with that new cauterize effect in Overwatch, that's just kind of you know? It dampens her ability to be a good tank when she gets cauterized into nothingness. So now you have to hit your knives, you have to hit your... And even when you do, if you're getting blasted by the DPS, it doesn't matter because your tankiness is being effectively reduced by, what is it in Overwatch? 30%? 20%? I think it's 10%? I don't know. It's something in Overwatch. And I think if it instead gave her overhealth, she would be tankier, and I think she would go up here. Or at least she would be above Doomfist, but I think she's below Doomfist. Hot take. Alright, Torvald. Torvald is a very protective character, bubbling his teammates, applying a nullification beam onto enemies. He even has like a reserved health bar that he can regenerate himself. I think he goes up here. He is a really good secondary tank. He's a really good off tank, and I think he's like the embodiment of what an off tank should be. They're self-supportive. They can help themselves. If they get into like a 1v1 with a flank, he can take them all using, the beam or his primary fire or his regeneration abilities. If he sees one of his allies being flanked or being, jumped, he can put a bubble on them. His bubble sometimes with some cards gives like increased damage. He's a really good tank. I think he's a very well-balanced tank. If he has any issues, it would be numbers, and I think that's why earlier I said ideal tank goes up here. So I think, yeah, for balancing reasons, he's really good. Nyx. Ooh, Nyx. It has been a while since I've seen a Nyx in game. Not because I think she's just not as popular nowadays. But where does Nyx sit? You know what? I'm gonna put Nyx here. Okay, sorry about that. My PC black screened in the middle of my Nyx explanation. I think we're all set to continue though. Okay, where I left off. I'm putting Nyx in with Zarya. Or, that's Orisa. I'm putting Nyx in with Orisa. Because I think she fits the similar playstyle of Orisa. Right? She's got, you know, she's got the shield she deploys in front of her. She punches through the shield. She, if the going gets tough, she has that poison aura she can activate that poisons people around her. And then it converts the damage she takes into, like, I don't know, Undertale purple damage, if you know what I'm talking about, where the damage doesn't immediately apply, but it ticks down over time. And then also at the end of the ability, or I guess she would want to use it at the end of the ability, but she can re-trigger the ability to, like, pull somebody close to her, like how Junker Queen's knife would pull somebody. And then she also has, like, a really powerful projectile scratch move that applies, like, this area of effect of, like kind of like a sojourn bubble, where it, like, deals damage over time, slows, and I think it also cripples, so you can't use, like, movement abilities. It's crazy what she can do. But the only reason I'm going to do this is not because I like Paladins more than Overwatch. That's not true. It's because I like Nyx more than Orisa. Orisa would be higher, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. But Nyx doesn't have a long-ranged gun, right? Orisa does, so she's good. Orisa's just, like, too much, right? I'm gonna fix all this. But while I'm talking about that, Nyx only punches. Nyx only has punches and can only deal damage from close. In fact, she deals damage when she's closer to the enemies. So you want to be, like, right up in their face, basically. Kind of like a Ramattra punch. Which is why I'm going to put her over Orisa, because there is a limit. Nyx isn't absolutely incredibly broken. She's terrible at long-range fights, so against the long-range comp, you might not want to play Nyx. Speaking of having too much, we're on to the opposite end of the spectrum and having too little. So, okay, that was a bit of a stretch, but I said speaking of, and I didn't know how to save it. So, Roadhog. I'm going to throw Roadhog here. Not as much of a weak pick as Yagorath, but let me tell you why I think his kit is just not, you know, good. I could technically throw him up here because he is just a very fat DPS, but that puts him high on the list, right? And I want to put him down here because he is a hybrid tank. But what these hybrid tanks have in common is that they lean more towards being a tank, right? Do they? I don't know. They have an identity, is what I'm trying to say. So, like, Doomfist is a dive tank, right? Junker Queen is a rush tank, and she wants to apply as many stacks of bleeding as everybody so she can start healing, right? Ball just wants to go in and slam people and get out over and over and over. You know? Like my uncle. And, Roadhog here, he doesn't really have an identity besides he has a hook and a shotgun, right? Not much of the shotgun. The shotgun is the follow-up to the hook, right? And they tried to change that with his rework. And by the way, the rework is yes and no. I love what they did with Take a Breather, so it's not a gamble to use it. Now it's a resource-based thing, so if you get interrupted, you can just keep going, right? Because originally, if you used Take a Breather and you got stunned, that's it. You're out of options. But now it's Take a Breather, gets stunned. Okay, I'll just use Take a Breather again. But they gave Roadhog Pigpen, that trap you put on the ground, as like a band-aid fix. They thought, oh wow, Pigpen. It's like this AoE slowing effect. That's amazing. That's great, because we want Roadhog to be, you know, an area denial tank. And you know what, tanks are kind of supposed to be area denial, protective, you know. But it's not what I it's hard to explain. Here, let me show you. Let's talk about Makoa for a second. Let's bump Makoa up the list. Let's talk about the similarities real quick, alright? Makoa has a cannon he dredged from the sea, and it fires one cannonball out at a time. Very similar to Roadhog. Roadhog has a shotgun, but his pellets are like condensed down in the center and then wider in the out. So he can do chip damage from afar, but he's really good at really close range damage. Both have hooks, basically the same hook ability. Roadhog has take a breather as his healing ability, but Makoa has a shield, a dome shield, that makes Makoa like crawl on the floor like a turtle. So it sacrifices Makoa's movement for his dome shield, unless you're using a certain talent. But and he also has a movement ability where he dashes forward in his shell, and that's a really good. I think that's just really balanced in terms of a tank. In fact, I'd put Makoa here. I've even you know what? Makoa at the front. Makoa is a really good hybrid tank because he's divey. He's focused on damage oriented, but if he needs to be a tank, he can be a tank. He can be protective. Roadhog cannot be protective at all. And in fact, they tried to give Roadhog other options besides just his hook, because before the rework, Roadhog, when he only had his hook, that was his whole character identity, right? If Roadhog had no hook, people would call it out, right? In scrims, right? If we were going against a Roadhog and Roadhog had no hook, everybody would be like, oh my god, Roadhog no hook, go, 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 get him, dive, 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 go, 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 right? But Roadhog has hook online, and we're like, okay, wait, Roadhog has hook, be careful. Because that's it, that's all Roadhog is. And then they gave him Pigpen. And the devs thought, oh, okay, this is awesome. Now Roadhog has hook and Pigpen. But Pigpen can be shot when it's on the ground, so you don't want to really throw it out in the enemy team, because then they'll just shoot it, and then it didn't do anything. And you don't want to really throw it close to you, because as teammates or enemies are walking towards you, they'll just shoot it and destroy it. So what you want to do is throw it at your feet, around a corner, and then hook people into it. So Pigpen isn't its own ability, really. It's just a buff to hook, which is not what Roadhog needed. I think he needed, like, I don't know, a movement ability, or some other form of, you know, displacement ability. Maybe the ability to boop people would be really interesting, but no, he has something that just makes his hook much better, which is not a good rework. I guess I'll talk a little bit about Makoa, since you kind of just throw him up there. Actually, no, I think I said everything I want to say about him. Let's talk about Raum. So Raum, actually it's very fitting that Raum and Mauga are right next to each other, because I compared them very seriously in my Mauga video. I think you all watched that. So Raum and Mauga both have faults that the other doesn't. So let's talk about them in tandem, I suppose. Mauga has I don't know. Do they both have faults? I don't know. I feel like Mauga is the better tank in terms of balancing, and that's only due to the fact that he has two guns that both do two different things passively, as opposed to just Raum. So let's talk about Raum first, and I guess I'll talk about Mauga afterwards. So, on the flip side of what we're just talking about, in terms of a Paladin's character being better than the Overwatch character counterpart, let's talk about an Overwatch character that's better than the Paladin's character counterpart. Oh my god. Okay, so Raum. Where did I put him? I think I gotta put him here. He's better than Hog, I think. But Raum's Gatling gun does chip damage, and with as much support as there is in the game, he's only good towards the end of the game, when cauterize is so high, like 90%, right? But then again, tanks are worse towards the end of the game because their sustainability to be able to heal is reduced towards the end of the game by 90% when he gets shot. So it's bad. I don't know. When Raum shoots his Gatling gun, every 8th shot on a hero drops a soul fragment that gives him overhealth, basically. That gives him soul armor. And then he can activate an ability to gather all the soul fragments in the map, plus an additional soul armor. And this is cool on paper in concept. But what that ends up doing is just makes it so that you want to shoot tanks more often, which is the same issue Mauga has, right? Mauga lights people on fire after a while of shooting them, and then with his other gun, I think it's right gun, he shoots people who are on fire. Now he's dealing extra damage. He's dealing extra damage on crit, and he's a passive that when he crits people, either through headshots or his right gun, he gets overhealth. So it takes a little more work than what Raum has, but they both suffer from the thing that they have to shoot basically bigger targets or close-up targets in order to get the most effective thing. The only reason I think Raum is weak is because his damage is very negligible. It's very, very small, which it should be. It's a tank, right? He shouldn't have a huge amount of damage, right? Mauga has a huge amount of damage. But Raum's getaway tools. He doesn't even really have a third ability, because his third ability is to just make his gun rev up faster so it shoots sooner and also consumes no ammo for a set duration. So that really isn't an ability, it's just part of that gun. But his getaway move, his dash, which is similar to Mauga's, it can be interrupted by CC. It's not CC immune like how Mauga is, which is very bad against characters like Inara, who can just place, and like Nyx, who can just place down fields that disable movement abilities. Mauga, on the other hand, I would throw Mauga here. I would even throw Mauga here. I think he goes here. I think he goes here. I don't know. I think it doesn't really matter. Mauga is... Oof. Mauga is just kind of a brain-dead character. You walk up onto the enemy's faces, you shoot them with your left gun, and then you shoot them with your right gun. Or if they're right in front of you, you shoot them with both guns. And then, when you really want to go in for the big push, you activate your cardiac overdrive. Let me skip this song. Let me back up, actually. There we go. It's hard to talk over somebody when they're just going, all day, all day. Okay. But Mauga, when he shoots, I already talked about his guns. Cardiac overdrive. I'm losing my train of thought. I've been talking for so long. I'm losing my sanity. I think I'm only halfway through. Oh my goodness. So, cardiac overdrive is like a really good, like, lifesteal applying effect that he gives to his teammates. And it really doesn't require brain power. And then when the going gets tough, here's the thing that really makes him brainless, is when the going gets tough, he just 180 turns around, activates his overrun ability, and just runs away. And nobody can stop him because he's got damage reduction and CC immunity on that run. And just runs back to his healers, he gets healed up to full. By that time, his cooldowns are ready, he goes back in. And you really don't want to use overrun to go in, even though it's kind of designed to go in and stomp on everybody. But you really just want to use it to get out, because it's a get out of jail free card, right? Is he worse than Orisa though? No, I think he's better designed than Orisa, because at least there is a counter. At least you can try to kill him before he uses overrun, or try to like get him away before he uses overrun. I don't know. Who's more cancerous, Mauga or Orisa? Is the real question here. I'd rather fight a Mauga, I think. I would rather fight a Mauga. So I'll put Orisa lower. D.Va. I'd say she's more of a hybrid tank, because she doesn't... Because she's got way more DPS than she should have with her rockets and her primary fire. I will put her here. And I think that's a good spot to put her. Yeah, I think that's a very good spot to put her. Is she better than Makoa? I think she's better than Makoa. Yeah, she's 100% better than Makoa. Not much to talk about in terms of D.Va. D.Va just belongs in the hybrid. Just because she, deals a lot of damage. She has a flying ability. Her only way to shield people is by deleting projectiles. So that's pretty good. Khan. I'd say he's just, your average tank. He's long ranged, got a shield. He's got basically the same thing that Junker Queen has. But he came first, I'm gonna say that. Where he can heal his nearby allies. She gives overshield though, so hers is technically better. But his heals for like a way more, And then he also has the commanding grab, which is like a fair version of Roadhog's hook, right? Roadhog can hook you from like a map away, but he can hook you pretty well. So I'm actually gonna throw Azan down here and throw Khan in his place, because Azan is still pretty tanky. Probably a bit too tanky. He really should be down here, but I think just because the number changes, he's okay up here. Now Inara is Paladin's version of Orisa. And you know what? I think she's worse than Orisa. Because Orisa at least just has damage reduction and CC immunity. She has damage reduction, CC immunity, and walls. Physical wall, May walls. And sometimes with the right loadout, you can have 2 charges of May walls. And with the right Inara build, you can just like endlessly loop your abilities and just be a tyrant on point, untouchable. And I think that is just far, far, far too much tankiness. Plus, same thing as Orisa, long-range projectiles on a tank with that much utility. Not a good thing. In her defense, I suppose, it isn't a very fast-paced shooting gun like Orisa, but it, I'm putting her lower than Orisa just because of how much she can do, right? She's got walls. She's got this like field thing that she can place down that disables people's ability to move fast or use movement abilities inside of it. And she's got some cards that while she's standing inside her warder's field, she has damage reduction. She has a card that says when she places down one of her rock walls, she gets like over health shield, basically. It's kind of nuts what she can be able to do, right? Okay, we'll talk about these two together, and I think I'm gonna put them together. Hear me out. Now, I'm not sure who goes first in this case. We'll talk about that here, but they both suffer from the same thing. They wield hammers, close range stuff in a first-person shooter, which makes them very, very niche, very, very tough. Honestly, I think Roadhog's better than all of these guys here. Sorry, but when it comes to balance, I suppose Roadhog is technically. No, I would say Raum is better balanced. I don't know. I don't know between these guys here. Okay, whatever. I'll just put how it was. At least, I'll put Reinhardt above Terminus just because Reinhardt actually carries a shield. Terminus has a defense matrix. It's not even that. I would say it's more like Sigma's grasp. But he's very damage oriented and wields a close range weapon. It's not, I don't know. Everything about Terminus is gimmicky. His ultimate is gimmicky. He dies and then comes back to life and explodes. That's his ult, which is cool because he has a resurrect, That's really tanky. but it's gimmicky. Reinhardt's Earth Shatter can be very good at winning team fights, but Terminus is just not as good. And I think they both need ways to close the distance better than what they have now, right? Reinhardt has his charge, but he's got no damage reduction during his charge. He can't, it's just a straight line. You know, I wish his charge came out sooner and he didn't have a wind-up. I think that would make his charge a little bit better, make him more viable if he just went, you know, started like running during his wind-up. I don't know. And then Terminus just has that jumping leap ability. And some cards even increase his speed, but just walking towards the enemy isn't formidable, you know? I don't know. Maybe I haven't fought against a good Terminus. I've definitely faced a good, oh my goodness, Reinhardt. But Reinhardt can be countered with long-range fighting. Okay. Zarya. While we're on the topic, actually, Ruckus is basically just D.Va. Except D.Va has the ability to delete projectiles, and Ruckus just has the ability to shield himself, so I'm gonna put Ruckus below her. Alright. We're almost there. Zarya. Zarya bubbles herself and her teammates and then damages people with a high damage beam. I think she fits really well into the hybrid tank role. Just because she's a really good off tank. She's very similar to Torvald, except Torvald is focused more on supportiveness. She's focused more on DPS, right? It's kind of weird seeing these two in the same, like, you know, it's like kind of like looking into the Spider-Verse and seeing like a bubble character that supports, a bubble character that damages, you know? It's very interesting to see these. Okay. Fernando. Now, Fernando has a close range primary fire, similar to Ramattra, or Raum. Oh my gosh. Reinhardt. But the thing about Fernando that I think makes him better at closing the gap than Reinhardt is that his charge comes out instantly. It's quick. It doesn't last that long. It doesn't grab people and make them go with them like Reinhardt does. But it does, like, knock people up into the air. So it's good for, like, you know, comboing people. If you're in their face, you can charge through them. I think that makes him better than Reinhardt in the case of balance. And his ultimate is really good at sustaining the team because it just makes the team immortal for a couple seconds. Basically turns Fernando into an immortality shield for anybody who doesn't know Paladins. So I think I'm gonna put him here. Is he a hybrid though? No. You know what? I'll put him here. I'll put him here. And it's really sad to see Reinhardt down here, because, you know, Reinhardt's like the Giga Chad tank, right? He's got the big but he relies on having a Lucio to speed you in. You don't need a Lucio to play Fernando, right? There's a whole bunch of kits that you can run. Like, I mean, just look up Flankinando. You hit your right-click fireball ability, and you get, like, an additional, what, 35%? 50%? Something in that ballpark. Speed increase. And so you can just actually run up on people, other than these two. Right? If Reinhardt wants to close a big gap, he has to use charge, and then he dies. Or he has to walk up with his shield, and then he dies. Or he has to shield hop, and then that takes a long time. Fernando can actually close the gap. Okay. I want to quickly talk about Barrack. We'll save Barrack for later. Alright. Sigma. And Ramattra. Both of them go up here. In fact, I don't know who goes higher than the other in terms of these. I'd say they have like a good mutual middle ground. Oops. Okay. But these guys are amazing. I'd say Ramattra, just because his primary fire isn't limited by how far he can go. But these guys have rarely needed changes or buffs or nerfs, or if they did, they're simply just numbers, like I said in the beginning with this entire row here. The changes are just numbers. It's not a rework. And it's nice seeing good, healthy tanks like this, right? Sigma has his deployable shield. Ramattra has a deployable shield as well. Both of them have, you know, like CC, so he's got his rock, he's got his vortex, he's got his nemesis form. Ramattra's got his nemesis form that makes him very formidable. Sigma has his grasp and his shield, which makes him very, very good at just soaking up incoming projectile stuff. Sigma's ultimate is really good at setting up his team for greatness. Ramattra's ultimate is really good at making people take focus off of his team. These two are amazing, well-defined tanks, and I think they deserve their spot up here. Because they don't need to close any distances. They don't need to rely on one single ability. They don't have to continuously rotate their abilities brain deadly, right? In the case of Orisa, she can just kind of rotate the abilities in the same cycle without really having to think about who she's fighting. Maybe not in the case of Javelin, I don't know. But in the, like, you know, if you're playing as Sigma and you're facing a Zarya, right where? Here's Zarya. Or you're facing, you know, a Sim, and you're trying to grasp their attacks, it's not going to work. You have to use your shield. But if you're facing a soldier, that's the perfect time. You know, it's not too much. There's counter ability to these tanks. There's abilities. There's ways to get around the things that they try to stop you to do, which is really good design. Tanks shouldn't just be, you know, like unkillable foes, like Orisa is, or like how Mauga is. They should have some killability. The only thing that should be unkillable is the players that are playing them. So, moving on to the last two characters, which are Paladin's characters. Barrack deploys shields, then deploys turrets, and he's got a really good movement ability that just kind of increases his speed a little bit. Not a little bit, by a lot, but for a duration. His ultimate is very similar to, I would say it's a combination of Ramattra and Mauga, just kind of deploying a fire turret with a dome over it. I would put Barrack there, just because I think he holds down stuff well. When I'm fighting a Barrack, it is hard to fight a Barrack because he's got his turrets that are shooting me as well. He's got his own little shield that he's dancing around. And if he needs to retreat, he's got his ability to retreat, right? And there are certain cards and benefits that give him, you know, constant uptime on his turrets. You could say that, I mean, you could put him down here with Orisa and Inara, but he's not even that tanky. You can kill a Barrack. It's just that Barrack has a lot of ways to fend off one threat at a time, you know? The best way to deal with a Barrack is to deal with the supports first, then take out a Barrack, which is what, you know, tanks should be. They should be formidable until they've lost their supports, and then tanks should be there to, you know, soak up the damage from the supports. It's kind of like a help each other kind of thing. Then we get to Atlas. Atlas is a very interesting tank. He doesn't necessarily have because he's got a railgun, but it's not a damaging railgun. He's got a rewind. He's got a tracer rewind. A tracer rewind on a tank is crazy. And then the ability to rewind enemies. Rewind is such a stupid word. The ability to rewind enemies, but make it so that their health isn't set to the highest in the previous 3 seconds, but the lowest in the previous 3 seconds, completely counters any sustain ability that somebody would use. Or if somebody gets a massive amount of healing, it counters that. And then he can deploy, like, basically, it's a shield, but it doesn't block projectiles, it eats them, like how Sig Grasp would, or D.Va Matrix would. He's such a weird tank. And then he has the ability to basically banish people in time. Most of the time, people would pick Atlas just to harass somebody in the spawn with his rewinds and his ultimate, being able to banish somebody twice in the same use of the ultimate, and that's annoying. But I think if you play Atlas as a tank would, I think Atlas would go similar to how, like here. Alright, let me take a look at this and see if I agree with everything that's put here. Nothing anthropic, really. But yeah, I think everything here is pretty good, actually. Yeah. Like I thought, nobody's gonna be anthropic. If anybody had to be anthropic, it would be these two. You know? But I don't think they're necessary. You know what? I don't care. Terminus, anthropic. Just because Terminus, I don't know. I think he's just worse. I think he's just worse than everyone in this list. Terminus is just a close range character. He's a close range DPS that is limited by his ability to tank. He is forced to be a tank, and for that reason he is a close range. He's not good at his job, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so we have 3 representatives of Overwatch at the very top, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 representatives of Paladins at the top here. Does that mean Paladins is better at making tanks? Hell no, because we have 1, 2, 3 members of the Paladins roster representing the bottom, and we have 2. Oops, we have 2 representing down here, but then we have 1 here, 1 here. You know, and then it seems like most Overwatch tanks are in the top 2 here. I don't know. I'm really glad to see that most of the tanks end up either being, you know, the ideal tank, or they're not quite the ideal tank because they're the hybrid mixed tank, you know? But for the tanks in this category, I wish that their damage would be reduced, or they would have some changes that would make it so that they weren't just, you know, overly tanky. For these guys, they need buffs. They need some reworks. The devs need to take a look at what their character identity is and rethink it all. That includes you, buddy. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this long video of me just talking about these characters. I love all of these characters. I really wish all of them could be in this category or this category. I really wish these categories were absolutely empty. This one could be, but I'm stinky like that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good one, y'all.